Welcome to the X-Man, Episode 4. I'm your host, Doc Coyle. The original X-Man. Well, not the original X-Man. I'm sure there are many people who have quit before me or been kicked out of things, moved on, made transitions, tried new endeavors. So we've had a crazy week. We have a new president. I'm not going to get too much into it. Our last episode was it was a pre-election special with my man Phil Lamont from All That Remains, and we got into a lot of it there, and I don't want to make this show a political show. We're going to talk about everything. Phil actually wanted to do a follow-up episode, which to be truthful, I was too unnerved and kind of affected by what had gone on to make another show about that. And all at the same time, I didn't want, this show has different aims than just kind of being that. And I'm sure we'll get Phil on here again at some point, like I said, to do a more traditional X-Men, talk about his journey. But yeah, I have to say I have embarrassingly so kind of fallen into a little bit of a post-election depression. And if someone wants to actually really know about my feelings, I don't know how many people follow my writing. I put a piece up about my thoughts on the election on my website, www.coyle.net. It's called Transmissions from the Bubble. Why did the smart people get this all wrong? And that pretty much sums it up. So I don't want to belabor that. And I know there's probably people who listen to this who support, all sides of this issue, but it's also important that I be honest and not just play it to try and appease everyone. I want to represent who I really am, and I'm disappointed in what we did, and I feel like it's a big step back for the country from a symbolism standpoint, and I'll just leave that there. I thought we had kind of moved beyond some of these issues, and it looks like we're back in the muck, and we have a lot of figuring out to do collectively. We have to listen to each other, learn from each other. I've been speaking to a lot of people who support Donald Trump in the last week, and it's been really important for me to do that, to get their perspective and learn a little bit. We all could do ourselves a favor by talking to as many people as possible. I would actually recommend if you actually are interested in hearing other people's perspectives on what just happened, there's a great podcast from This American Life, which is usually one of the top 2 or 3 podcasts every week. It's a pretty amazing show, and it's entitled The Sun Comes Up, and they profile about a dozen, maybe not that many, but a handful of different Americans' view on what happened. And they really show all sides, and it's really balanced. And it gives you, if you're really interested to see how this has affected people, I really suggest you listen to it. And it's, I've been seeking therapy in all kinds of ways, and kind of learning other people's stories and getting people's perspectives I find to be really super helpful. Well, I don't want to belabor that subject too much. Like I said, if you want to hear what I think about it, please go over to doccoyle.net and check out my article. Just to reiterate, please head over to iTunes as well. Leave a rating, leave a comment. That really helps the show. Luckily we've charted in the music category of podcasts every single show we've put out. So that's amazing. And it's just, I'm really excited to keep everything going with this. And also, if you want to find me on social media, it's my Twitter and Instagram is @DocCoyle, DOCCOYLE, and you can just search me on Facebook to find my professional page. My main page is pretty much maxed out, but you can follow my stuff on there as well. So let's move on to our guest for this episode, Mr. Bruce Lamont. And if you're not familiar with him, I guess his name is probably more known in some underground circles, but he's a friend of mine. I've known him for a really long time, and I thought his story was really interesting. So even if you don't know his stuff, he was in a band called Yakuza as a singer, and he also plays saxophone. He's also in a new band called Corrections House, another new band called Brain Tentacles, which we didn't get into in this episode. And he also plays in one of the biggest Led Zeppelin tribute bands in the country called Led Zeppelin 2, in addition to having a solo career. And I think his story, in terms of someone who does music professionally and really over the course of several decades, is really fascinating. And I'm really glad I got to get him on here. And he's kind of breaks the rule. He's not technically an X-Man, because I don't know if he's actually quit any of his bands. So, but I don't think we should hold that against him. And certainly I'm not going to, if I can have the opportunity to speak to someone, I'm not going to stick too hard and fast to the title of the show. Rather just have interesting people with great stories. So also to kind of give you guys a precursor, we mentioned a man named Steve Joe in the interview, and Steve used to be the A&R guy at Century Media Records. Now he's over at Prosthetic, but he worked with God Forbid, Shadows Fall, a bunch of bands like that. And he was a really great guy. Actually just got featured in a Metal Sucks article about the most important people in the music industry. I couldn't agree more. I love the guy. So just for some reference, we mentioned his name, and I just wanted to give you guys some background info. So enjoy this talk with Bruce Lamont. All right, Mr. Bruce, thank you for coming out.
Of course.
How you feeling?
Feeling great.
You feeling great?
Live in Los Angeles, California.
Live in Los Angeles, California. So you're in town with your Led Zeppelin tribute band.
Yeah, we didn't play in LA. We just doing a couple shows on the West Coast here. We did San Diego last night. Tomorrow night is actually Lincoln, California, just north of Sacramento, at some casino. I don't remember the name. So now some people might be listening to this and say, okay, so you have this guy on your show and he sings for a Led Zeppelin tribute band. What's going on here? So I think it's it's funny. We've known each other probably at this point for like 12, 13 years. Yep.
Something like that. But and I know so Bruce is in a band called Yakuza, and the way we met was through we were both on Century Media Records at the time, and our A&R guy, Steve Joe, basically linked us up and let us stay with Bruce. Basically, Bruce gave us a place to stay at when we were out in Chicago, where he's from. So what I kind of want, so I know Yakuza, and I know this new, I guess it's not new, but this tribute band you do is called Led Zeppelin 2. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, like, let's go back to, even before we met, because I know you've done a lot of different stuff.
Okay.
So going back to, that time, what was there anything before Yakuza? What was...
I played in a couple bands around Chicago. I fronted a band in the 90s, kind of weird, alternative rock silliness. Not the band guys weren't silly. I was silly as the front man, just trying to, I was a young man trying to find myself in the rock and roll world.
Did you grow up in Chicago?
I did. Born and raised. South Side. I moved onto the north side in the early 90s, and been there ever since. Did that. Played saxophone when I was a young man, and I picked it back up in the mid 90s, where I started to, because I was kind of falling in love with, I had this dual life where I was into rock and that kind of stuff, but I also was a big fan of jazz and improvisational music, and that was kind of a lot of stuff was starting to bubble up in this underground scene, particularly this club called The Empty Bottle. They had this series every Tuesday and Wednesday night. There's a guy named Ken Vandermark and another artist in town named John Corbett were the curators, and the stuff they were bringing through was just mind-blowing. It was Ken was an amazing saxophonist, but they're also bringing all these European players in that I just real crazy, a little more on the noisy side. So I fell in love with that stuff, and that I kind of rekindled my interest in playing saxophone. So I started back up again after not playing for 10 years.
What's your training with saxophone?
Well, I played in school band until I was 15, and I had private instructors and all that. When I picked back up, I was studying with a guy at DePaul University named Mark Colby. He was more of a traditional jazz saxophonist, real clean kind of bop player. And then actually I studied with Ken Vandermark for a while, who's not a traditional saxophone player by any means. Compositionally he would write out things and whatnot, but would manipulate the horn and it's the way I'm trying to figure this out. Oh yeah, keep talking in the mic. He would just, he would make sounds and noises that maybe you wouldn't normally make with a saxophone, but I thought that shit was really cool. So
with like effects and stuff. Or?
No, actually, just shrunking and screeching and biting the reed and doing all that kind of stuff. No, but I just thought it was really neat, and he did it really well, and just full of energy. And his band, the Vandermark 5, also had this guitar player who was like a huge like COC fan, and he that kind of came off in his playing a little bit. So he was kind of like this like more like punky kind of metal jazz. His name's Jeb Bishop, played trombone too. Fucking killer, man! Like so good. Like just nothing I'd ever heard before. I was like, this is so awesome. But so I was kind of living this dual life of rock, and then I got way back into metal in the later '90s, thanks to bands like Neurosis and Meshuggah, and particularly Candiria from Brooklyn, New York. We are Candiria from Brooklyn, New York.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I actually wrote that down. I was like, so people who aren't familiar with Yakuza, like what would you, like? You guys were, so as I looked up, they were called avant-garde metal.
Yeah, right.
What is that? Does that mean anything?
I don't know. Nope, I don't know. I said somebody called it Experry metal. I was like, oh, that's hilarious. I don't know, man. It was like, again, those guys were a group trying to figure out what they wanted to do, and they were looking for a front man. And we'll fast forward here to the later '90s, where I was, like I said, I was playing in bands where I was playing saxophone, and I was kind of thinking about getting back into being a front man again in a band. It had been a few years, so I put an ad out in the Chicago Reader, and the guitar player from Yakuza called me, and I went down and checked out their music, and it was awesome. It was like all these really weird time signature changes, and just tonally was kind of different. I never heard anything like it before, and we started jamming, and like 2-3 jams in, they're like, do you play anything else besides vocals? Do you play guitar, bass? I go, yeah, I play all that stuff, and I play saxophone. And they were like, dude, bring the saxophone down. And I was like, no. And then I did, and it worked, and that became a thing. So here we are.
So did you guys feel like a kinship with a band like Candiria?
Oh yeah, for sure. When we cut like our first demo record called Amount to Nothing, I had sent it out to a couple people. Steve Joe, didn't know him. I just kind of went through the Century Media website and found this guy, and the only reason why I picked him, besides the fact that he had the sushi chef, remember that, his picture when they had like profile pictures of all the employees, and
I do not remember that.
His was some random Japanese like sushi chef, which I thought was funny, but the best thing was that his first concert was my first concert, same place, Judas Priest, Poplar Creek, 1986, first metal concert.
Where was it?
Poplar Creek, Hoffman Estates, Illinois. He's from Chicagoland area.
Okay.
So and it was Priest 86, and I saw that same show, and I was like, oh my god! So I felt this. It instantly felt this like kinship, like this dude's got to be cool. We both saw the same pre-show, and then I sent one copy. I didn't want to send it to the A&R up at Relapse, so I sent it to their honorable mention guy, which is a guy named Dave Whitty.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know Dave Whitty.
And then somehow, maybe it was a little later through Steve Joe, I really wanted to get it to the Candiria guys because they're like my favorite. That's why actually I sent this up to the Century Media because I think they had just gotten a deal with them before 300% Density came out or whatever. And I was like, man, can you get this to Ken? He's an amazing drummer. And then I met Ken in like 2001 at a Clutch show. He pulled me aside. He's like, dude, Steve Joe gave me a Yakuza record. This is amazing. And I was like, oh, hell yeah.
Ken lives out here, right?
Yeah, you were telling me that. Yeah, I haven't seen him in years.
Yeah, he looks exactly the same. Like he still like has like a 6-pack and like beats the drums like they owe money. I play with Ken in my cover band called Rebel Noise Group, and we do like 90s and 2000s stuff, which I was kind of amazed when I asked him to do it that he actually would do it, because I'm like, he's a serious artist. I'm amazed he would actually do it, but yeah, I love that dude.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't seen him in years, but yeah, I've always respected him in that band. I always thought was really awesome.
Well, the thing is, so basically, we signed to Century Media in 2000.
Yep.
And I think that was the same year Candiria signed, and you guys signed 2000?
Same, 01. So, yeah, we're around the same time. Oh, maybe, I'm sorry. We were talking to them in 01, and then finally in 02, we just dropped the deal. The record's already done, and it came out like 4 or 5 months later. So what was that like, kind of going from being this, obviously a band that really didn't fit in with any one thing. You know, maybe you had, like I said, you had the Candirias, a Dillinger Escape Plan, right?
That kind of relapse noise sound. going from just being very underground to all of a sudden you're on one of the biggest metal labels. Like, was there like noticeably different things happening for you guys, and all of a sudden doors opened?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, we were getting like international press, and it came pretty quick. I think it was just something that stuck out a little bit. So, like Wire magazine wrote up this thing, and I think all the press in Chicago got real serious about us because they're like, whoa, these guys just put a record on a bigger label. But as far as we were still the odd band out. I mean, even with the label, for a variety of reasons, they didn't know what to do with us. I mean, I think Steve Joe got us signed and then he left. So we were like,
oh yeah.
We were like kind of stuck. And there were some people, and there's no slight on anybody, of course, but there were some people at Century Media that just weren't into what we were doing, and they not even into it, they were vocal about not liking it.
They're like, listen, we don't like you, but we have this contract.
We got this thing, right? Exactly. And I remember, like, Steve told me we had gotten a review in Rolling Stone, and I think we were the first band on Century Media to ever get a review in Rolling Stone, and he sent that out via email, like, fuck yeah, they got reviewed in Rolling Stone. Silence. Not one person wrote back.
Wow.
Except maybe remember George.
Yeah, George Valley.
He was always in our corner. So
George is the best. For people listening to this, George Valley was the press guy at Century Media. Who I met him when he actually was still a college radio guy.
Right. And
he was in college, and he came out to see God Forbid on our first tour ever in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. That's what it was. So he was huge God Forbid supporter from day one, and he moved to Sumerian Records, and now he actually is doing artist management. He manages Devil You Know, and I still think he does some PR stuff, but I love George.
Good dude.
The best.
But then, like I said, no slight on anybody. I get it. We were the weird band, and so they did try to do some stuff for us. They ended up getting us on like an Opeth tour, which was awesome.
So I always find that, because I think people who have never been signed or have this idea of what it means, and I think it means something now than it meant 10 years ago, 12 years ago when we actually got our record. Actually, I'm saying, using these terms, this is 16, 15 years ago. Jesus Christ, we're getting old.
I know.
That being on a label, especially back then, it meant something. Sure. And that all of a sudden there's this credibility, and someone could make a call on your behalf or do something like that. So
for sure.
So all right, so you're getting on a tour with Opeth. Was that the first time you'd toured, or the first time you did a big tour?
We'd been on a couple tours. We'd already had gone out with Candiria and Burnt by the Sun.
Oh, damn, that's sick.
Yeah, that was a great tour. They got us on some Vans. I remember this is a good one. They got us on some Warped Tour dates, and it was just like West Coast shows. And I guess I don't know what it was. Like, they gave CM like a slot for a couple bands to play. And I remember that we were like the guinea pig band. We were the new band, so they threw us out there. And I think Nevermore was going to be the next band that was going to do it.
Nice transition.
After two shows, I called Century Media and was like, "Trust me, tell the Nevermore dudes, don't do this. It's not worth it." I mean, it was like nobody there gave a shit. I mean, not just about us, about like any sort of metal in general. Like, Nevermore would have been playing to 5 people for sure. Yeah. I think that Nevermore was like, I think I met Worrell that year in Seattle, and we talked about it, and I was like, oh yeah, you're supposed to go on Warped Tour, and we did it first. And he's just kind of like, oh yeah, we weren't gonna do that shit, whatever.
Nevermore on Warped Tour should be a reality show.
I know. Well, now I would say put them on.
Well, now it's completely changed, because you had a lot of the bands like Atreyu,
right,
who kind of were a metal, I guess a more Warped Tour friendly version,
definitely,
of like what we were doing.
Sure.
And bands like Unearth, and even a band like Unearth, like eventually that stuff kind of bled into that world. The whole like Warped Tour, Taste of Chaos, Killswitch Engage, kind of changed the game with that Bullet for My Valentine, Avenged Sevenfold.
Yep. This is what we're talking. This is like 01, 02 when this happened. So like, no way. It was like I said, we were definitely the most metal thing that was happening, and we were the weirdest band out there. So that it was like double whammy.
Yeah.
We were destined to fail from the minute we hit stage.
Yeah, but Warped Tour used to be really weird. I mean, Kid Rock did Warped Tour back in the day,
right,
when he was still unknown, and it would be just it was almost, I guess, a little more of that almost like original like Lollapalooza type of mentality where it's like, oh, you're a new thing, just go on Warped Tour and whatever. And it was kind of more of a different mix, where now I think it's a bit more streamlined to like, it's this kind of scene. It's going to be punk rock. It's going to be this kind of very distinct section, of the hard music world.
Yep.
All right, so you do that. You go on tour. Does the band ever become like a job, like a full-time job, or is it always kind of a thing that you're doing?
I mean, we tried, and there was like, we also had like internal things happening with the band. Guitar player leaving, coming back, and he was kind of an integral part of the early years. And there's this unstable element of things happening inside the band as well as outside the band. And the outside stuff, we were getting some of these opportunities. The money wasn't there. I mean, I personally was putting up fronting all this cash, and all of a sudden at the end of like,
where were you getting money from? Just working a normal job?
I would work, and I did credit cards that I jacked up and dumb shit, like stuff I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
But I felt like we had to get out there to, just to see how the world would react to us. I didn't care about money, you know what I mean? I guess I didn't have any
at the time.
But then I remember like, this is probably like early 2004. I just looked back and I was like, oh my God, I'm in debt. I'm fucked. I got to do something. So, we kind of had to pull back for a second. I had to.
What time period was this?
Early 04.
Okay.
And,
And how many records at that point had you put on Central Media?
Just one. And we only did one. And you know what? We never actually signed with them.
You never signed with them?
Oh, no.
How does that work?
We did a licensing deal.
Oh, okay. There you go.
That was a funny thing, too, because years later, I mean, I don't think they gave a shit, trust me, but like, we did a 5-year licensing deal, which they had never done before. Again, I shouldn't even be talking about this kind of stuff.
You shouldn't? Wow, are you going to get sued?
I don't care. No, it's over. But after the 5 years were up, this is kind of funny. I think it was Phil Hinkle and Brandon. Is he their publishing guy?
Yeah, Brandon.
Yeah,
Lindo.
they approached me at South by Southwest. Like literally, it was 5 years almost to the month. And they both walked me. They're like, "Hey, man, how's it going?" Always friendly with those dudes. And they're like, "So I sent." What you had to do is you had to send a letter in like 6 months in advance saying, "Hey, the terms of our licensing agreement, and I want the record back." And so I sent that in. There's no response. So they were like, "Yeah, we got your letter, and we don't really know what to do with it." And I was like, "Well, you can just give me the record back." And they're like, "Okay, what does that mean?" Or something like that. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just following protocol.
Well, I think it comes down to
they just deleted the title from their catalog. Done deal. That was it.
Yeah, and you have a copy of the masters.
Oh, you have the masters. Yeah.
So there you go.
Done. That's it.
Independent, baby.
Baby.
The independent world. All right. So you're done with Century Media. So at that point, 2004, you're a completely independent entity. Did you guys ever have like a manager or booking agent?
Nope.
None of that stuff.
We did have. Yeah. Maybe we got one. I can't remember when we got an agent. It's a dude from. He's like a straight edge guy from Boston.
Pike?
Thank you. His assistant.
Okay.
Woman. I can't remember her name now. We were booked through him, like one of his people, for a little bit, like a couple tours. And this was a little later. So we got off Century Media. We signed a deal with Prosthetic to do a couple records, and I think it was the first record we recorded in 05. It came out in 06, and we hit the road really hard. It was a record called Samsara.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the one that seemed to have the most kind of buzz and where it was out there kind of in the ether the most.
Yeah. So that one, and we hit the road pretty hard, man. We toured with everybody. We were on some really whack-ass tours. I was just thinking about...
Whack.
So we were on this tour with these bands, a bunch of... we were hands down the oldest guys on the tour by like 15 years. It was the number 12, Looks Like You.
Yep, I know.
Heavy Lolo.
Yes.
The Jean Benet, and us. And I remember...
How did you even get on that? Who was the one that who was headlining? Number 12,
yeah.
So were they like fans, or they didn't give it?
No, it got through the Pike agency or whatever. That girl, she was like, she would just kind of put us on this random stuff, and we got on that tour. And I remember Buffalo, New York was the first show, and there's all these kids, like it was sold out, like young kids.
Yeah, that's the quote unquote scene kids.
Yep, 16 years old, 17 years old, and
a lot of like swoopy hair in people's faces.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So we're setting up, and this kid's in the front row, and he goes, "Dude, dude, what is that? And he's pointing at my saxophones. I'm like, those are saxophones. He's like, which one is that? I'm like, that's a soprano saxophone. They're like, that's cool. Dude, how old are you? And I'm like, pretty old. And so yeah, and we would play and like there'd be no response. They didn't know what to do. Like there was a show in St. Louis where I jumped in the crowd and was like barreling through these kids and they were like running for the doors, just that kind of shit.
Good thing you didn't get sued, man. You could have paralyzed some 16-year-old girl.
I mean, I know how to hit them without hurting them.
Okay,
like that, just kind of.
It's like judo. You can
right.
kind of take the hit.
Exactly.
Reverse judo.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly how it went down. But we got along with the band's great. All those kids were super rad, and we had a lot of fun with them. But like, yeah, it was. And again, we're like, what the hell? What are we doing?
Yeah, but to me, there's something about that I think is super character building. Like going out on something that even if it doesn't fit, you kind of learn. Like for us,
I was gonna say, what you guys did tours like that too, for sure.
I'd say Did
you guys go out with Guar?
Yeah, so that's
okay.
What I was gonna bring up. So it wasn't that musically we didn't fit with Guar or anything like that. Even though obviously they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing, and they've historically toured with pretty fucking heavy bands.
Oh yeah.
But what it taught us is that we were still pretty new. We had only been touring at that point for like a year, right?
Yeah.
So we weren't very well known. It was a handful of people here and there, but it was a crowd that was kind of ready for something. They were intense. They had a lot of energy, and we realized we had to perform.
Yeah.
We actually had to, all right, they don't know about us. And in fact, the thing that they're most in tune to might not even be music. It's just you have to bring something to the table. And it actually taught us how to perform.
Yeah, I can see
and
that.
not just sit there and play because we knew that subtlety wasn't going to work.
Sure.
You really had to, in a sense, I think it taught us a sense of professionalism that I think most bands, I don't even say most bands, if you're the type of band that really only caters to one style, or I'd say even more directly, like coming from the world we did, which was the hardcore scene, where the hardcore scene primarily relies on crowd interaction, right? So they need stage diving, they need a huge pit, and in a sense, that's kind of their barometer for how well the show is doing.
Sure.
But all of a sudden, when you're playing a show and there's a barricade that's 10 feet deep, and people don't know who you are, and they're like I said, they might not even be there for music. They're there for a show.
Yep. Especially Guar. I mean, you don't have to be a fan of the music. You might just be a fan of the costumes and the blood and the semen.
Exactly.
Spewing whatever,
it's a whole nother level.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was something that I think we always had an edge up on a lot of bands because we knew how to turn it to like this other level of performance.
Yeah, I've seen you do it. I mean, you guys killed it on like when I was out with you guys on Ozfest, and I saw you guys turn crowds like that. It'd be a couple songs and boom.
Yeah, well, even to agree where I think I would hear over and over again that. Like you guys, like your albums are cool, but what you guys do live, it's a different thing, and that's maybe a testament to like, hey, maybe that what we're doing there, like the albums never kind of reached that level, or maybe we kind of overperformed the music. Do you know what I'm saying? I think like Lamb of God was like that. Like if you heard like New American Gospel when it came out, it wasn't that well produced. It had a very underground, and so when you saw them live and they sounded so good, and they obviously had a huge presence, just everything about them was out the gate was perfect. It was like, whoa, this is that. Even for As the Palaces Burn, I think when that came out, it didn't have that modern polished thing. There was something really raw about it, and when you saw them live, they sounded even better.
Yep.
So all right, so you tour super hard. And then
get nowhere.
Going
even further into debt. I was coming home from tours and just working nonstop.
So you work in the bar industry?
I've been in the service industry this whole time since the day I turned 21. I've been slinging drinks. So still
slinging drinks. That's also what I do. Yeah. But I didn't start doing that till 2010. When, God forbid, pretty much the writing was on the wall that maybe this isn't what we're going to do for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So I started working at the bar Duff's
Yep.
in Brooklyn, and I started just working kind of part-time, taking a day here, a day there, you know, and I think for people like us who want to do these other artistic endeavors, you know, that world is helpful because it's flexible.
Absolutely.
And the lifestyle's not that much different than
It's pretty close.
than being in a band.
Be in a band, be a bartender, you know, whatever. It's funny because I've been working for a guy named Bruce Finkelman who owns the Empty Bottle in Chicago for like 12 and a half years now. And the very first time we sat down, I'd been going to that club forever. I'd been playing that club forever. And finally, you know, one day he's like, why don't you work here or something? Like, I need a manager. And I'm like, cool. And we sat down. He's like, what do you want from me? I'm like, honestly, I'm going to ask you one thing. I'm not married. You know, I don't have kids, but I have bands, and I just want to tour. And he goes, this is your world. This is what we do here. It's feast or famine as far as the money goes. And everybody's in bands, and that's been the case ever since. And you know, I still work for him on a whole different level now. Manage different property for him and stuff like that. But the same, we talked again recently, and he was like, wanted to kind of pull me into another management role, kind of a more involved thing. And I said, okay. 12 years later, I'm still going to tell you this, you know, I'm still not married. I still don't have kids, but now I have like 7 bands and I tour. And if you're cool with that, I'm not going to tour like insane, but I'm going to tour. And he's like, done. Okay. That's it.
Well, so I actually didn't mention this to you, or maybe I did, but at least not since you've been here. So the name of the podcast is The X-Man, as an EX. It's because I'm an ex-member of a band.
Right.
And a lot of my writing that I wrote about was kind of about that transition from quitting and then trying to figure out the real world.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, is just because I've kind of noticed from afar how you kind of have balanced that, in that you've been in these, you know, like you said, the service industry, but you're always active and you're doing, and the you know, I look at a band like Yakuza, and there's no way, I don't think anyone could listen to that and say, that's a band that's trying to go get rich, or that's like it's
right.
It is as clear as day that it is an artistic pursuit.
Sure.
You know, and what do you think it is about you that all these problems you had, like doing a shitty tour or going in debt, yet you still want to be an artist and pursue that life more so than just getting a regular job and putting on the suit?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of times, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I just was going to do that. Like when I was telling you in 2004, I looked back and I was in debt. I was involved with a female that I was really into, and I started to think about, like, you know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, you know. And I went to go take a union test for this elevator union my father's been working in for like 47 years. And I
to like repair elevators? Or?
Yeah. But it's, you know, it's good work and everything. And he was going to get me an in or whatever. And I went to go take a test, and somehow they had lost my paperwork and I wasn't allowed to take the test. I was like, that's the sign. You're not doing this. Go right back to just don't worry about it. Okay. Everything's fine, you know? And, but yeah, there's been a couple times, not as of late, not in the last 10 years, but like, you know, I'm like, yeah, maybe I should just fucking give this up. I just can't. I don't know. You know, I just can't quit.
You think it's just a compulsion? Like it's not something we're in control of? It's just...
It's all I ever wanted to do since I was like, you know, 10, 11 years old, is play music or be involved in music some way, shape, or form. And I just kind of figured out a way to, like, you know, here's the thing. I've told this people all the time. Like, I work festivals, I work at clubs, and I play clubs, I play festivals, and I play in this cover band that plays, you know, to 5,000 people sometimes, and sometimes it plays to, you know, whatever. And I play house shows with my solo band or whatever. I don't care. And honestly, I can be on either end of the spectrum. As long as I'm somewhere involved in all of that, I'm cool with it. You know, barring that eventually I play. If I don't play, I'm gonna freak out. Like, but yeah. I'm totally cool with like going to fun festival and managing that shit. You know. Or
you mean managing bars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I could easily be this has happened before too. I'll be managing the bars and be like, oh, by the way, I got a club gig tonight at 10:30. I got to split, you know?
Yeah.
And then take off, you know? But I just love that whole world, you know? I want it to keep going, and whatever I can do with my energy to like kind of feed it on all ends of the spectrum, I'm in, you know?
I remember I was working at Duff's and we played the Afropunk Festival 2010, and the Bad Brains headline.
Hell yeah.
And while the Bad Brains were playing, I had to leave to go work.
Don't you hate that?
To do a shift at the bar.
Yeah.
But it actually felt kind of good. It was like, I get to jam during the day and kind of work at this metal bar. And listen, and I'll tell this for everyone. Working at a heavy metal bar like Duff's it is work. It is physically hard. You're exhausted at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But you're basically hanging out with metalheads.
Yeah.
Listening to metal.
Yeah.
You know, and most of the people are super cool, and, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So as far as I was concerned, I was like, as far as jobs go, this is a pretty metal job.
Yeah.
You know, did you work in like metal bars, punk bars, like stuff like that?
The bottle, which is like everything. I mean, that's just.
What do you mean? It's just a regular bar.
Well, Empty Bottle. You came by there before, right?
Did we? I don't know.
I know. Well, one day you did. Well, Byron. I know you guys were maybe picking keys up at my house.
Okay.
Because I think Byron and Corey walked in because my friend drove by and was like, "What are the God Forbid guys doing walking into the Empty Bottle?" And I'm like, grabbing my house keys, and they're like, "That's cool. You know those guys?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're staying with me for a while or whatever." It was something. He was driving by and saw those two like get out of the van to like come up. Empty Bottle's super eclectic programming. I've loved it.
Do they have live music?
Oh yeah. Oh dude, we got to talk about this place, dude. Yeah, we're about to celebrate a 25th anniversary next year, and I've been hanging around there since 1994. A book just came out this year. This guy John Dugan wrote this book. I got to do like a couple interviews in it. It's pretty sweet. Yeah, shows 7 days a week. Super eclectic programming. Metal, punk, indie rock. A lot of indie rock on the way up and the way down. Honky tonk on Friday afternoons. You know, jazz, improvisational music. That's where I was going for years to go see shows there like that. Hell yeah, we just had Nails there before did they break up?
They went on hiatus, which is like super fucked up because it was like
I really like that record.
But I was just like, you can't go 5 feet without seeing a shirt. They were on the cover of Decibel. Like they
Massive.
were like they're about to like really like be the new Napalm Death. Like be like the kings of grind.
Totally. Yeah, we had them like a couple months ago, and then all of a sudden I read that they were like on whatever, and I was like, oh man, what?
So when you have problems with a 3-piece band, shit is, you know, we need to. There's not that many elements. There's like 2 dudes in that band who really don't like each other, and I don't know those guys personally. I don't know really much about them except they're just like one of the heaviest bands I've ever heard in my life, and I'm like I've never been that angry about anything.
Yeah.
Like I don't know where that comes from, man. That's you know, but all right. So going back, where were we talking? We were talking about so just kind of surviving, you know, and I kind of want this show to like speak to those guys, you know, maybe like me who are in, you know, or young, even younger, in their mid-20s, in their 30s, who are like asking themselves those questions, because I think this environment is probably there are so many talented people now who are not going to go pursue music because you can't make a living. Yeah. Like there are like people who would be, you know, the next Bob Dylan, the next, you know, Ice Cube or something is now he's going to be, you know, he's going to go into tech, or he's going to go into finance, or become a DJ or become a programmer or something. And it's, and because you know, in a lot of ways hopefully it stabilizes. But I think, you know, when you look at it just from a business standpoint, from a business model standpoint, the touring apparatus for a band, what you have to bring in just to get to a point where even you're at a middle class level is the kind of distance between starting from ground zero and that point is so long now that it's like, you know, I have a lot of empathy for young people kind of trying to start, because you're basically saying I have to mortgage my well-being in the short term, which could affect you long term. Definitely. Just to have kind of a shot at this. Whereas like back in the day, even us, you know, like God forbid, 15 years ago, we had tour support. Yeah. You know, we could get $5,000 to do, you know, a theater tour just to help us out, to buy a banner, to maybe, you know, put it towards, you know, sharing a bus, or, you know, pretty much every time we went to Europe, we got tour support, and we needed it. We would not have been able to go, you know, and we weren't like doing those tours and then coming home with money. Most of them, we come home broken even. You know, we didn't start, you know, really being self-sufficient with Europe, where we didn't take any tour support probably to our last like 2 tours, because we had by that point we had gotten good guarantees, and that's the idea, is that you use the label just to help you build your brand, and then once you're at a level, then it's like, all right, thanks guys, now you don't have to take that money, but now you don't. I don't know if people have to like get investors or have rich parents or what.
Yeah, I mean, let's take this back to where I was talking about in 2004. So before things started getting weird in that regard, where the tour sport is now non-existent, or there's no record sales to back that up, or whatever. I mean, like I said, I'm in a band that's it's an artistic endeavor. It was never. I was hoping that it might flip into some kind of financial. There'd be some kind of financial recourse, but the reality of it wasn't. So I said to myself then, okay, first things first, we're getting out of debt. This is ridiculous. Secondly, how can I bring some income in to keep this going? I still have to play. I still want to be a part of bands and write and all that kind of stuff. So the bottle gig came up. That helped. So every time I came home from tour, I could work a month straight, make a bunch of money, whatever, get through, pay the bills. And then as time went on, I started, this is really weird, but like I happened to start a solo project, just me. And
is that just called
Bruce Lamont? I have one record out.
I have a better name.
What's that?
Lamont.
There's a band called Lamont. They're broken up. I talked to them via some friends saying like, can I just have the name back so I can call it Lamont? Lamont.
Well, the thing is, so I need to tell people. So basically, Lamont is basically the name of like a black dude who like talks with a cigarette on his mouth with a do-rag on. So to us, that was what we conjured in our head. So all the God forbid dudes, we would just call Bruce. We just call him Lamont. What's up, Lamont?
And Randy Blythe.
Randy, he started calling you Lamont.
Oh yeah, you guys got him to do that.
Okay,
you would all call me Lamont. He thought that was funny. I didn't see him for like a long time until about 5 years ago, and I ran into him at a show in Chicago of all places. I'm like, hey Randy, blah blah blah, and later in the night I was like saying goodbye to him, like, hey, let's exchange numbers, come to my house. Like, see you later, Lamont. And he like threw it out there, and then like, and he did it again in a text like more recently, like last couple of years, like Lamont ! And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I remember for you guys, and then he whatever.
Well, we would call each other Monkey as a way to diss each other for a while. Like, get in my face, Monkey. And then now, pretty much probably until one of us dies, we'll see each other and greet each other as hey. He'll be like, hey, Monkey.
God. Hilarious.
Yeah. So I had to just give a little background on the Lamont.
Right.
But which is French? Am I?
No,
it's not.
That's been a misconception. This is
if it had an E on it, would it be
or a capital French? LA, capital MONT.
Oh, okay,
but it's not that. It's actually Scottish. Used to piss my mom off to death that when I had teachers, I would spell the name, and she'd be like, "That's not how it's spelled."
Okay,
like, all right, calm down, lady, relax.
For the Scots, we should. I feel now we should be. I'm quarter Irish. You're Scottish. We should be drinking, but not just coffee.
Coffee and water for now.
That's right.
It's not 5 o'clock anywhere. I mean, actually, it is 5 o'clock in Chicago, but not here. Well,
all right,
we'll get to that later.
I feel civilized. Wow.
Started doing some solo stuff and started doing some gigs, and guess what? You make $50. You make $100. Just you. Not bad.
Yeah.
Pay the band $50, $100. Not so good.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that lately. About the idea of, like I said, the business model.
Yeah.
Like how being a comedian, it's just a better business model. It's not a better medium. It's not more, like
it's just one person.
Exactly. Or being a DJ, it's a
just
better
one person.
It's a better business model. We're kind of like, it's funny you think about things like globalization and automation, and now that's come to music where now bands, they don't have a keyboard player. The keyboard is on a track.
Yep.
Like I've seen Animals as Leaders, Periphery, they've been playing, there's no bass player. The bass is on a track.
Yep.
And which tells me, essentially, and actually I was working a festival and that got rapper Atmosphere, and who's awesome, and he had like this guitar part as like the main part of the song, and it's just on a track.
Yep.
And I'm like, we're all expendable. And people just like a lot of people don't know this about the American economy, where they think all the factory jobs are going away. No, we produce more now than we did 30 and 40 years ago. We're just doing it with less manpower because our automation is so good.
Yep.
And that's, like we need to, the funny thing is, because of the record sales going down, everyone's saying, all right, we got to tour more.
Right.
All right. But even that model, it's like we need to figure out a way to do that, but where the cost isn't so high, where until you're making, the way I looked at it with God forbid, until unless we were making like at that kind of around that $1,000 a night benchmark,
right,
then the band was basically not. We'd have to tour just in the with the guys, maybe one crew guy in a van.
Yep.
But to get over that, to get when you're making 1,500, 2,000, then all of a sudden you can turn that little section of profit. I was like, all right, now this actually is meaningful.
Yes. So I said the solo thing, and then that's funny because I had a conversation last night. We played in San Diego, and Tristan Stone from Author and Punisher came out. He's a solo artist. He builds his own instruments. Amazing metal dude. And we were talking about the rigmarole of touring solo and that kind of thing. And we're both kind of old school, where I don't use tracks. I do a little bit. I like created tracks that I made myself, but I try to like create everything on the fly.
Like that Reggie Watts shit where you like kind of do the loops.
Yep. Yeah. So and that's just because I'm like old school, and I feel like I'm cheating if I like use tracks and not instead of not. And then he and I were both saying like, yeah, he's like, I felt the same way too, but, and I go, yeah, but there's some tracks that I use that if I built them on the fly, that would take 15 minutes and would bore the shit out of people in the audience. They'd be like, what's going on? And it's just too tedious. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here. I made the damn track. I'm going to play the track. And then I play over the track. So it's like, whatever. That's the solo thing. And we're talking about financially, like I said, it works. As the years have gone on, I've done more solo tours. And I just went out with Scott Kelly last year. We did 2 months, him and I in a car. And
what kind of car though? We talking Prius? We getting good gas mileage? What's going on here?
Yeah, it was. I couldn't get a Prius, but it was like I think we used like the Nissan something, and we got like 36 miles to the gallon.
There you go. So I'm talking about guys.
Big trunk, get everything in there. Yeah, we take all that in consideration, and we were even still staying in hotels. We didn't stay in like friends' houses and stuff like that.
You're grown men,
and we
both
hotels. Yeah, we're most definitely both grown men, and we both came with money, like good money, and we didn't play to more than 50 people at night. Sometimes it was a house show, sometimes it was a small club. Whatever. It works, and that's one model. Here's another model. There's a band called Led Zeppelin 2.
All right, so let's.
And that's the biggest one.
So when did Led Zeppelin? So now for people listening to this,
all these universes happening at once.
So it came to my attention maybe about 4 or 5 years ago that Bruce, through our mutual friend Denise Karicki, brilliant woman, one of my best friends, that Bruce Lamont from the eclectic, crazy, noisy band Yakuza is the lead singer for one of the best and biggest Led Zeppelin tribute bands called Led Zeppelin 2. I went to go see him at the Gramercy Theater in New York, and there's like 700-800 people there. It's fucking packed. And he's not from New York. He's from Chicago. And I'm like, what is this? And this band I was blown away. It's the best. Not that I've seen a million Led Zeppelin tribute bands, but it's the best I've ever seen.
Thanks.
So when did this even start?
Okay, so this for fun, we started to do this like 15 years ago. Me and the guitar player and his old band. They were called Busker Soundcheck. They were like a 90s like kind of pop punk touring band. It was just like a Halloween thing, That's like a thing in Chicago where bands would dress up as their favorite rock and roll stars.
So you started out dressing up.
Oh yeah, yep. And in fact, we didn't even do Led Zeppelin at first.
What did you play?
We did Black Sabbath, and we were called Black Sabbath. And it was just again only on Halloween. We just did it for fun, and we would never play any. It was all deep cuts. We would never play Iron Man. We wouldn't play Paranoid. It was like just weird stuff that we liked. And we did a couple shows like over a couple years, and we're like, man, this is fun, but it's like, I don't know, it's a little limiting. And I wanted to get into the Dio years, and those guys didn't like the Dio years, and I was like, well, this is not going anywhere then. Who cares? And then we were living in a rehearsal space, And Paul, the guitar player, just busted into Custard Pie just for fun. And we did Custard Pie, The Rover, and In My Time of Dying. And then the guys were like, dude, you sound more like Plant than Ozzy. And I was like, let's do Led Zeppelin next year. Okay. And we're like, same deal. No Stairway, no Cashmere, all deep cuts. And we did this.
This was a Halloween thing?
Halloween, 2001. And we did this show. We had no name. We just like put the word out like, hey, we're doing a Led Zeppelin show. And we had this insane crowd, like people packed to the gills. And
Where'd you play?
A place called the Bee Kitchen. And at the time, it was just before E2, so they were allowed to. It's like a 225 cap room now, but they probably put like 400 in there, 450. Very dangerous, very fun. Remember when things were fun and dangerous back in the day?
Listen, I was just at they have have you heard of the Ultimate Jam Night they do out here?
I know what it is. Yeah.
So they used to have it at the what's it called? Lucky Strike.
Okay.
And this place, it's a pretty big place. Maybe holds like 700-800 people.
Yeah.
And I think they put like 2,000 people in there when Steve Vai and the mystery guest Dave Van Halen.
David Lee Roth.
David Lee Roth, that guy. See, the coffee's not working, guys. I can't think of David Lee Roth. But yeah, there were so. It's still the most packed show I've ever. Actually, it's the second most packed show I've ever been to. But the fire people came and shut the show down.
Oh, that was the show.
That felt dangerous.
That was the show where the rumor was that the DLR solo band was going to play.
They were playing, but it wasn't announced that David Lee Roth was there. It was announced that it was Steve Vai, Billy Sheehan, and
was it Greg Bissonette?
I don't know the drummer's name.
Yeah, that's him.
And then apparently it was going to happen. So even with just honestly, I think Steve Vai just you put that guy's name and people are going to show up.
But dude, the original DLR band, I would have been pretty stoked to see this.
Honestly, it was so packed in a way. I was almost happy that it got broken because it was too. There was nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's just uncomfortable.
But anyway, so that felt dangerous, and that was like 6-7 months ago. So I'm just saying, you can get some danger, man. Yeah. You want to step on a nail? Go do it, man. All right? There's danger. I mean, you live in Southside Chicago, son.
Don't fall asleep on the railroad tracks, baby.
It's true. All right, so you play the show. It packs out.
Yeah, it was fun. And then we decided to do it a couple more times. Like, it was, again, a once-a-year deal. And around 2004, when I was getting broke, I had to figure out how to make some money. And so I kind of went to the guys, and I was like, hey, can we do this like more than once a year? People seem to really like it. And there's a club in town called Martyrs. We didn't want to play any like cover band clubs. So we just like kind of kicked around some ideas. And this place, Martyrs were friends with the owner, Ray Quinn, and they would occasionally have like a band like that. But it felt like it was perceived like it was like a little more legitimate if you played there. So we're like, let's play Martyrs. So we did like in springtime, and it went really well. So then we would do like spring and fall, and then we would do like 4 times a year there. And that was good money. I was like, okay, great. Here's some more income. Paying off the bills, with this. Oh, I can supplement. And I started to see the light bulb starting to go off. I'm like, interesting. So what if I play in this cover band every once in a while, and I'll funnel the money to cover my failing art band? Not failing, good musically, bad financially. But that was the idea. And then it's been kind of snowballing ever since. Okay, so then fast forward to 2008, and we play Martyrs in like November, sold out, packed. My boss at the Bottle is really mad that I won't ever bring the Led Zeppelin band to Empty Bottle. He said, this is ridiculous. Why won't you play my club?
How big is Empty Bottle?
Like a 350, 400 cap room.
Okay. At that point, had you outgrown some that size? Or?
Well, I'm going to tell you the story. So Martyrs is around the same. We sold out Martyrs. So he offers me this really whack date, like the 3rd of January. It's like right after Christmas. It's right after the holidays. I'm like, no one's going to show up.
It's a rough time.
He's just trying. In my mind, I'm like, you're just trying to fill the calendar. Fine. And he gives me some crazy door deal thing. Like 70 like pre-sales. I'm like, okay, not bad. But it'll be all right. I'll be like, a couple people. And I remember sitting at the bar, talking to the bar manager, and this Ukrainian guy comes in and is like, how much for the tickets for tonight for the Led Zeppelin show? And they're like, oh, it's $10. He's like, I'll buy 20. And all of a sudden, we're downstairs in the dressing room, and I'm getting reports. There's a line, like, just like a mile long. It is sold the fuck out, packed to the gills. People are drinking their faces off. We come on, and people just like lost their minds. Okay, so cool. We just did 2 sold-out shows in 6 weeks. I'd been trying to get us into the House of Blues in Chicago for years, and they were just kind of like, nah, kind of putting us at bay, whatever. I finally emailed the agent the next day. I'm like, look, we just sold out Martyrs. We just sold Empty Bottle. Can you give us a night? It can be an off night, whatever you got. And she comes back to me, and we were friends, and she's like, okay, I got this night. It's a Saturday. We're going to do a door deal. Probably not going to get any more than 500 people in here, so don't expect anything. I'm like, all right, good. This is now 6 weeks after the Empty Bottle show. 2 weeks later, I get an email, and the first line just says, dude. And she's like, we're already at 400 pre-sale, and there's like 4 weeks left. I'm like, keep me posted every week. Another 100, 150. Boom.
Now, are you
boom,
guys doing, like, what kind of promotional apparatus do you guys have?
We didn't do that.
Nothing?
Posters around town. The Live Nation juggernaut that we finally figured out something that, you know, if it's brought to you like from that sort of angle, that it completely legitimized us in a sense, because people were like, well, if they're playing House of Blues, then they got to be good. You know what I mean? And yeah, that show, it was funny because then my boss was like making fun of me. He's like, oh, so you're playing House of Blues now? How's that selling? I'm like, we have 600 pre-sales. And he's like, what? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Again, massively sold out. They turned away like 300 people. There was like 1,300 people in the room, and we were like, what the hell?
And this was what year?
This is now early 2009. And I mean, within months, all of a sudden, there's agents coming in. Hey, you guys can draw. So we got an agent, and we started touring. And we played like Boston and New York were like two of the first places we played ever. And same deal, sold out shows. Then we went down to Texas, sold out shows. It was just like, what the hell is going on here? You know? And trust me, we've had our ups and downs, but it's generally been good. And it's another source of income for me, you know,
Is that more your day job, quote unquote day job, than the bar stuff?
No.
It's still like
I mean, it's...
Could it be?
Potentially, but again, you know, as much as I love it's cool. Like I like it, it's fun, but like I'm still a creative guy, and I have other needs, and
sometimes it still feels like work.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't mean to if people come to see it and they love it, I'm grateful for that. You know, I don't want them to think like, oh, I'm up there, this really sucks. Like, no, not at all. No, I think it's fun and it's cool, and it is what it is. You know, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's, you know. Nobody that comes to see Led Zeppelin 2 really gives a shit about any of the other bands I play in, I don't think, you know.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
So this is something that's kind of interesting to me. I never, like, to me, it's funny, like, going back and listening. For some reason, my memory of Yakuza was crazier vocally, you know, but I went back and listened to it. It almost had, like, your vocal almost reminded me of, like, Perry Farrell. Or something like that, like had that kind of, you know, range and some of the moves. And now with Led Zeppelin 2, my question is, had ever dawned to you to sing for a more, I guess, accessible rock band, if you can kind of do that style?
No, yeah, I never did think that. And then it was funny is that, you know, if I ever had like if there was ever like a will or desire to do that, I think I get it from playing in the Zeppelin band. Like that's about as accessible as you can get. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want to play in Kingdom Come. No offense, Kingdom Come. If anyone knows who
I don't
that
know.
is.
I don't know Kingdom Come.
They were on Monsters of Rock in '88. They were the first band that played, and the singer sounded just like Robert Plant.
Oh, okay.
And we were like at 16 years old. I'm like, that's bullshit. These guys sound like Led Zeppelin. I'd rather just play a Led Zeppelin cover band than a band that sounds like Led Zeppelin.
Well, not, to me,
it's terrible. That's a terrible.
Well, to me, it's not
example.
even about being in a band that sounds like Led Zeppelin. It's just being in you could be in, you know, whatever modern rock, active rock band with, you know, you can clearly do.
I had a few friends that were.
You can do a lot. If you can sing like Robert Plant.
Yeah.
I mean, even Robert Plant, by his own admission, can't sing like Robert Plant anymore.
Yeah.
So that clearly is an indication that you're a pretty good goddamn singer.
Thanks.
So you can do a lot of you have a lot. Like, it made me realize that, oh, maybe I wasn't really understanding, you know, how much depth you actually have as a singer and what you can do. It's just something I thought of, and it's just maybe just your taste. You have eclectic taste, and you're into things that are a bit off the wall.
I'm always into off the wall stuff, but yeah, I mean, funny because I had a couple friends that were like, "Dude, you should try out for Stone Temple Pilots," and I was like, "Fast track it. I'm not sending a tape in. I'm not being an asshole. can you do that? I'm like, easy. Don't worry.
Who was it?
It's a couple of my friends that, like, one guy knew them, you know, and that was when they were taking demo tapes for their new singer, and they're like, you should try for some Double Pilots, ha ha ha. I'm like, I will.
Can you do like that baritone kind of,
yeah,
or as they call the Jarl?
Feeling like a ham and mustard shake. Sure. Whatever you want, guy.
You can do it.
Boom,
Wow.
boom, boom, boom.
You can do it all.
Gimme.
That's that. So do you and another thing that's really kind of fascinating to me, because I started my own cover band, like I said, mainly for fun, but as like in the back of my head, like, oh, this would be a cool supplemental income thing, but I want it to be fun.
Yeah.
First and foremost, like you said, do songs that I've never heard other bands do. Like we would do like Unsung by Helmet. Cool. We play Judith by Perfect Circle. These songs I've never seen any band cover. I'm sure they have, but it was just stuff that like, fuck yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
But being that I think you have the artist's mind. Is there some kind of conflict there between kind of like the I guess the commercialization of music? Like, is there anything there, or is it the two just don't have anything to do with each other to you?
I find it fascinating. I mean, like being in the thick of it all. Like, this band has a high-powered agent. We have management. I deal with higher-ups at Live Nation and C3 and all these companies that would never in a million years would any of my other bands ever even fall on the radar. Anybody, you know what I mean? And I have this relationship with these people, and we're cool, like back and forth and like whatever. Me being like, I've always been, I kind of grew up being this kind of, my metal punk rock DIY ethos would normally have issues with like, dealing with the man. But you know what? It's my cover band.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with dealing with the man. The man's paying me. So I'm like, whatever. So I have no issues with it at all. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Do you feel?
I made a joke in an interview that was like, my solo band, because it was like last year ago, my solo project just played a house show, and my cover band played an arena in the last month. Just saying, the music world is fucked up. But is it?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I think what really inspired me to kind of do the cover band thing was seeing Steel Panther.
Oh yeah.
Partially just because they sounded so fucking good. Like, they sound better doing Motley Crue than Motley Crue sounds like Motley Crue.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you just see how, like I said, same thing. They would play every Monday, it'd be sold out, and people actually gave a shit.
Yeah.
And then they created a new business model by saying, okay, so now we're going to do original material, and then now you go see them and they don't really play covers. Yeah. Maybe they'll do one, they'll do a couple. I think they kind of do different types of shows, but I've seen shows where they don't do any covers, and they are literally an arena band in the UK, and they've created something different. They kind of broke the mold. It's like part comedy show, part cover band, part original band. And, it just made me this idea, like, there's not one way to do this.
No, there's not. And it's funny you say that, because they've always been on our radar, as with this band we're playing with, the Australian Pink Floyd. Like, and
that's what they're called, right? The Australian Pink Floyd.
Yep.
Why is there, so there was a Pink Floyd show on Tuesday in LA, there was one on Wednesday. Is there like the anniversary of something?
I don't know. I saw you post that, and I did.
There's a bunch of Pink Floyd shit going on.
I think the Australian Pink Floyd always toured the U.S. like once a year, so that's a random occurrence that this happened. No, I don't think there's anything going on. But what I want to say is that, like, for us, we tried to think out of the box a little bit, like what to do with this thing. And very interesting, what you just brought up about Steel Panther. That's one thing that we've always dabbled with a bit. So we recorded a Yardbirds song that Led Zeppelin never played, called Happenings 10 years time ago, in the style of Led Zeppelin, just to kind of see how people would react. And then we put it out as a single. We also re-recorded Immigrant Song. It was actually for a Chicago Blackhawks promotion mostly, but we made a video out of it and just kind of threw that out there. And now we're at the point where our guitar player has written a bunch of stuff, and he's like, how about we write a Led Zeppelin 2 record? And I said, let's do it. Why not? Who cares?
You know what? It's funny. It's like fan fiction.
Yeah, totally.
It's it's like, hey man, I didn't like the third Terminator. Like, I'll make my own Terminator movie.
Yeah. In
a weird way, and it's this idea of, especially when you have a band like that that's so, like, the idea of Led Zeppelin is so big that it doesn't even make sense to me. Like, and to me, the only other thing that's bigger than that is maybe like the Beatles. Like, the Beatles were so big that you couldn't build a structure that they couldn't sell out, or that people wouldn't show up. I mean, that's a band that could literally draw a million people everywhere they go. You just put them in the middle of a field and people will come. And, and Led Zeppelin's probably the next version of that and what they kind of represent. And then when they disappear and they're no longer there, what that means to people never goes away.
Sure.
So it's just waiting for someone to fill it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I've witnessed it. I mean, like,
people getting just emotional and like connecting.
Yeah, And it's funny because like the last 5 or 6 years, not the bigger shows, but generally if it's our shows, we make a point to go out in our costumes and, take pictures and meet the fans, go buy the merch and all that kind of stuff. And so I get a lot of one-on-one interaction. And there's been times where like people have like been, my father, loves your music and he passed away and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, and I have to be like, oh, that means so much. Thank you. And I'm like, okay, it's not my music, just so you know. I'm just an actor. But that's cool. Another thing I wanted to say too that we've borrowed from is my sister was in this play for a long time called The $1 Million Quartet, which is basically the telling of the famous night at Sun Studios where Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash got together and they made a musical out of it. Hit musical, killed it in Chicago. It's been in Vegas for a long time. They tour, all these things, and it just seems like another shade of I don't even know what you want to call it, is like this reality. People, it's legitimizing this idea of like what cover bands can do and what they can be. I mean, apparently they toured through L.A. and this guy named Cody Slaughter was doing Elvis, and he's amazing. I mean, so good. He looks just like freakish. Priscilla Presley came, and she freaked out. She was like, he's so good. Like, she was talking to him, and my sister met her and said she was like shaking. She's like, oh my God, he's fucking Elvis.
Well, it's this I think this idea of that's becoming more crystallized now with, you have holograms.
Yep.
We have,
Yeah.
virtual, PlayStation has a new virtual reality system where this idea of kind of, or even if you look at, what was that movie with Johnny Depp where he gets his consciousness is uploaded into the computer?
Johnny Mnemonic.
No. That's from like the 90s with,
that's where my head's at.
With Keanu Reeves.
Oh, that was Keanu Reeves, right? Sorry.
But it's called like trans something. Anyway, but this idea of kind of, like you said, something goes away, and yet it doesn't really have to go away. We can simulate, and we can have a virtual
recreate or whatever.
There's this the idea of something of impermanence is kind of going away. It's kind of weird. It's freaky.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of freaking out myself a little bit just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's really fascinating. Because I've always been a fan of cover bands, and that's why I started one. And I'm having some troubles with mine, trying to figure out how to break the code of how it works. But to me, the thing I respect about cover bands is all these people in original bands that want to talk shit or not really give them respect. It's like, yo, if you're actually in a cover band that's doing well, you're working, you're playing. You're playing all the time. Yep. And that's really, to me, what it's about.
Yep.
Is about getting up there and working your craft, learning the craft, and perfecting it, because it's all going to be helpful down the road somewhere.
Of course. Definitely.
And I think learning, because most of us, or at least if you're like me, I learned by playing other people's songs. I learned by playing Metallica songs and Pantera songs. How that became the foundation for what I was as a player.
Yep.
So there's not really much difference in that when you get up in a lot of those bands. It's Metallica. They started out playing covers, and Van Halen started playing covers, and Pantera started. So I think it's super fluid.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So the last thing I want to talk about before we go is you're in a band called Corrections House.
I am.
which has been labeled somewhat as a underground supergroup. So we got Scott Kelly from Neurosis. We have Mike Williams from I Hate God.
Correct.
Who's the guy doing keyboards and
That's
stuff?
Sanford Parker.
Sanford Parker. I look at Sanford's ex bands and this dude was in every band. He was in Knockmistium.
Yep.
He was in Leviathan.
He's an engineer for that. He was in Twilight.
Twilight. I'm sorry. I said Leviathan. I was thinking Twilight. But anyway, yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. So how does something like this come together, especially when is everyone kind of spread out?
Mike's in Louisiana, Scott's in Portland. Sanford just moved here. That's why I stopped into L.A. to say hi to him. He was in Chicago. Sanford's an engineer. Basically how that group came together was Scott and I have done shows together over the years, just solo stuff, and we played something. It was like January 2012, and it went really well. We did some songs together. We're like, we should really figure something out. Yeah, cool. At the same time, Mike and I had done like a noise show down in South by Southwest, and then we were going down again, and we did it again, but it was different. He did some spoken word stuff, and I played music behind him, and people really seemed to enjoy it. They're like, man, this is cool. It was actually at a Century Media showcase, and they were like, a bunch of guys were like, man, that's nuts. You guys should put something together. We're like, cool. So I was talking to Mike and I was talking to Scott separately, and finally I'm like, hey man, you guys know each other. What if we did like a solo tour together, like the three of us? And Mike, you can do spoken word, I'll do my stuff. Scott, you do your stuff. And they both were like, that's great. Let's do it, man. Like whatever. No, again, solo project. We don't need as much overhead. We can travel in a car. It'll totally work. And then while we were talking about it, we figured out a time frame. It was gonna be like January of 2013. Blah blah blah. And then we're like, man, well, we got to do something together, the three of us. And like, yeah, what do we do together? Hey, we should probably get it recorded. Yeah, we should probably put it out. Okay, cool. Hey, I'll call Sanford. He can engineer this for us. Great. Call Sanford up. Hey, man, doing this thing with Scott and Mike. Not quite sure we're going to go with this just yet, but, we're going to need an engineer. And, Mike will come up here and we'll work on it. And then Scott will send some stuff in. Cool. Yeah, I'll do it. Half hour later, he calls me back. He goes, man, I don't want to record this. I'm like, okay. He's like, I want to be in it. And I got an idea. And I went, oh, all right, give me your idea. He's like, 4 solo sets. I'm doing all electronic music. And I think I can figure out a way to make this work. And, we'll talk keeping costs down. I'm the engineer. I'll do it. I'll just do it. You know what I mean? Like, don't have to cost. And we'll just write, we'll bring Mike up here. We'll work with Scott. Scott at a studio, And that's how the band became a band. So we wrote 2 songs. And put a 7-inch out before we played our first show.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first heard about it, I'm like, this sounds, first off, Corrections House, that's a hard-ass name. You know what I'm saying? The only thing harder, you can just call it prison rape. That's it. That's the only way you can get, first that's a hard name. You hear there's a bunch of heavy hitters, and then it's industrial music. Like it reminds me of that like late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. Because it's got that, there's something just angry and like it's and intense about it.
It's dark.
So I was like, wow, this is like just very interesting sounding. And then you kind of do things where you do add like distortion and stuff to your saxophone.
Yeah, I have some I have like an octave pedal, harmonizer pedals I use, and distortion, just kind of weird, just to kind of create some more weird sounds along with the electronics and the guitar and stuff.
Well, that's the thing. I think sometimes when you're playing, when I'm listening to your different bands, I don't like you're playing and I don't realize that it's actually a saxophone. Yeah, and I'm like, I have to go back and I'm like, oh yeah, I was probably like, where was it? Because I was listening to music and I was like, where does he come in? And then I'm like, oh, he's using effects and it's getting real.
If you see it live, then you see it happening
No, I watched some of the live stuff. Yeah. Where did the like kind of imagery? Because you guys, there's almost like a uniform. You guys have a really awesome logo. Yep. Where did where did the idea to kind of have?
Again, talked about all that. We didn't want to have it focused on the 4 of us, like visually. So we were like, maybe we'll create this like sort of iconic style symbol. We had a friend of ours draw a few things up for us, and we kind of gave him some direction on what we wanted. That became the symbol. We kind of built it around that. We wanted everything to be very uniform. That's kind of an industrial thing from back in the day. I'll give a little nod to that. And we only have like 1 band photo out there of the 4 of us. It was just for like this magazine in France. Otherwise, it was always this imagery. And then this weird okay, I'm gonna try to make this as short as possible. There's this guy that used to go to hardcore shows back in the 80s. I think he's from Southern California. I'm not quite sure, but he knows Scott, and his name's Stuart Fairbury. And this guy is fucked up. Okay, like he's a real whack job. I've never met him. I mean, he emailed us, but Scott knows him. And this guy somehow he saw the first press release that came out about our band and started sending all this like conspiracy theory shit to us, like, this is why you guys are a band. There's all this fucked up shit going on in the world, and he would just like feed us all this stuff, send lyrics to Mike or like to us, like we get all this. So
just
stuff.
like a legit kind of like Alex Jones, kind of like, you know, tinfoil hat guy.
Yep, exactly. So we kind of incorporated him, and we're like, well, okay, if you're gonna tell us to do, he would tell us to do things like, well, you have to put this out, you have to do this, and we're like, all right, well,
maybe it's he's speaking through the Lord to you guys.
That's what we thought. So we're like, well, okay, fine. You're gonna be this way. We're gonna kind of exploit you a little bit, and we started to use his quotes, and he would send weird imagery and stuff, and put that shit up on
your own
Instagram.
Personal Charles Manson.
Yeah, he's nuts. And like I said, I mean, he would just write this really fucked up shit, and we loved it, and so it's kind of cool. So
does Mike some of this stuff? Is he reading? Is some of it his?
Mostly it's Mike's. Yeah, there's a little bit of his. He would like Mike would read through it and be like, I'm not saying that, like, you know, like just cut through it and stuff like that, and we'd be like, whatever, you know, and yeah, and then like the guy kind of inspired like all the visual stuff for our video thing, because we just started like Seward Fairbury. Let's create an image for this guy. So he's like the focus on all of our videos.
It's like the totem.
The guy that wears this black.
Is it really him?
No, it's not him in the videos. We created. We don't, like I said, I don't know what the guy looks like. I never met the dude.
Yeah. Who does he send stuff to?
It's mostly Scott, and then he would forward it out, but it would say stuff to us. Like he would tell us certain things. It was really weird. Like, you know, like he'd be like, Seward sent this email, and I'd be like, Bruce, blah 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 blah, and I'd be like, how does he fucking even know what? I don't know. You know, he just would read stuff online, and then it was awesome. I mean, it's kind of cool. Like, we're like, fuck yeah, this is pretty nuts. So yeah, we made him our minister of propaganda.
Minister of propaganda.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. What was the decision making process behind not using a drummer live? Just never came up.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Maybe down the road, it'd be something that we would maybe do. I don't know, maybe for financial reasons. I mean, the first shows we did 4 solo sets and then a Corrections House set, and we drove a Scion because Scott was sponsored by Scion, so we got a free car. So we had to fit everything in that car that we could take on tour with us. 4 dudes, a guitar, a baritone saxophone, my pedal board. Mike had all his stuff in a little bag, and then Sanford's stuff.
No merch?
Trunk. And merch. Oh, we got a roof rack thing, and we would put stuff up there. And we made a good friend of ours coordinated this deal where we had poster art for every night of the tour from a different artist.
Awesome.
But every artist would drop us like 25 to 50 posters. Well, we couldn't sell 25 to 50 posters every night, so all of a sudden we had stacks of. Now we have all these fucking posters in the goddamn car. We have if we had a van, no problem, bring them on, you know.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, we were like just trying to give them away at some points. Like people would buy them for a while. They'd be like, just take these. We can't carry these anymore, or had to ship some home and that kind of stuff. But yeah.
So is there now? This is. I'm assuming when I look at a band like this come up. And just kind of like who you know, like, is there like a secret society of underground musicians? Like, it's like you hang out, it's like the guys from Baroness, and they hang out with the guys from Torche, and then like Mastodon. Like I feel like there's like all this, the Neurosis and ISIS and all these people. Like, is that what's going on? Are you guys like being really cool and having like cool conversations and smoking cigarettes? How does is it? I don't
know who's smoking.
No one's smoking. I just feel like cool people
2016
who like have really good taste and are really artistic and like living.
Oh, he's like, dude, yeah, baby, I got this idea. Yeah, doom, 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 doom. What's that, bro?
I'm just saying. I just feel like all these collection. I'm like, these are like. There's not too many bands that have as much credibility as like an I Hate God or a Neurosis. Like these are entities that have. The perception is that they've stayed true to like the original vision, and they've been a massive
influence on me on so many levels since the 90s. You know, they run their own record label. They do music outside of the Neurosis style of music themselves. Like, you know, they do, you know, Scott and Steve do acoustic stuff, and, you know, Tribes of Neurot is all about this real experimental noise thing. And I always thought that stuff was really badass. And then when I finally befriended Scott, you know, a dozen years ago, we just hit it off on so many levels. But it's funny because as serious as conversations may go with us, which they're not that serious, the one thing that we have in common more than anything is we love sports, both of us, particularly baseball and hockey.
Ours are called sport.
Sport.
Or like me and Mitt Romney, that's our thing. Sport.
Okay, this is sports. So we are, and we play this game called Tap Sports Baseball, and we're really, really competitive. He's more competitive than I am. Like he'll shit talk me all the time, and I'll shit talk him back, and that we probably that's our biggest bond. Like that's a daily phone occurrence. Is like, oh man, you fucking did what? And I'd be like, motherfucker, you did this. Blah 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 blah. No, there's no like serious like, oh yeah, we got some gigs next month. Yeah, okay, whatever. Like, you know.
Well, trust me, I have the same thing, but it's only basketball. We have it's basically me, my three friends from Jersey.
Yeah.
I don't know how familiar you are with New Jersey post-hardcore, but it's the drummer from Gaslight Anthem, the drummer from X Number 5, and my buddy Will, who used to play in this band For the Love Of, and we just talk shit about basketball. So we're actually going to do I don't know if we're going to do like a real basketball podcast, or I think we're going to do a show on here first as like a test run, and it's going to be crazy. So I know all about it, but just cool. Basketball.
Yeah.
You know,
that's cool.
Baseball is about, you know, I get the same, when you mention that, it makes me feel the same way that kid did when he asked you about the saxophone and what it was. Right. You know, that's just, I'm done with baseball. I used to love baseball when I was younger. Now I'm just like, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with baseball, and I really love hockey too.
There you go.
Basketball and football, it's fine, but it's just not the focus. But yeah, to each their own, whatever.
Listen, I was in Chicago when the playoffs were going on, when the hockey playoffs were going on, and that is a hockey town.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I felt like I didn't want to say nothing bad about anything. I might get stabbed or hate crimed. You know,
it's pretty serious business. Yes, especially when that team's been they've been in the playoffs every year since 2009, and they've won 3 cups.
They're good.
But I'll tell you what, this last season where they got knocked out in the first round, I was actually rather grateful, because I will tell you, being an involved hockey fan, it puts a lot of stress on your life. And I know I've got a couple extra gray hairs because of those said cup victories. It's too much to handle, and it's very distracting. I'm supposed to be writing music and running venues. No, I'm sitting at a bar every night watching hockey, or I'm at the games watching hockey.
Listen, I was
losing my shit.
I worked Coachella, and then for like 6 weeks, my main job was watching the NBA playoffs, and I probably watched after the first round every single playoff game.
Yep.
Like, it was pretty embarrassing, and that's when I started writing my blog again about basketball, because I was like, there's no way I can do this much consumption without contributing anything, or then it becomes a waste.
Right.
So that's the thing, is you take your obsessions and then you filter them through your creative life, and you keep that flow going.
Right. I mean, I did write for Decibel for 9 years, their extreme baseball preview issue.
There you go.
I mean, I had to do something to justify my.
Well, that's how I got started. Was writing the Hoop Logic blog on Metal Sucks.
Right.
So I know all about it.
There you go.
Well, listen, buddy, I think we've been going for a while now. And I think, you feeling good about this?
I feel great about it.
Awesome, man. Me and him, we met the other day, and we talked. We basically did the same thing, but just talking about politics and whatever. So we could literally do this all day, probably.
The new Metallica single.
Dude. Hardwired. That's right. We're listening to it. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play it next after this. Cool. No, I'm not. I'll get sued. But anyway, man. Love you, man. Good to see you.
Man. Thank you.
And it's a wrap.
Boop.
So that was the song Fruitcake by one of Bruce's bands, called a brand new band called Brain Tentacles. And like I said, we didn't get a chance to talk about it during the interview because I didn't know about it. I had heard about the band and didn't even realize he was in it. That song is actually off their self-titled debut, which is on Relapse Records, and also features my old friend, Mr. Dave Whitty, the drummer from Municipal Waste and Discordance Axis and Burnt by the Sun, fellow New Jersey boy, and also Aaron Dallison from the band Keel Hall. Brain Tentacles has a band camp where you can go get the record, listen to it, and I'm sure anywhere you find Relapse Records. So again, I want to thank Bruce, and I thank you guys for listening. Mamba out.